As AI wars ignite, missiles fall, oil markets choke, and superpowers race for control, tonight's headlines aren't just news, they're the blueprint of a world on the edge. Welcome to Zenith Global News, your eye on a world at the breaking point. The next world war won't be fought with weapons, it'll be fought with algorithms, and it's already begun. Another night, another barrage, and innocent lives caught in the crossfire of a war with no end. America just tightened the screws, and the global oil market may never be the same again. Diplomacy meets defiance in Islamabad, where one wrong move could ignite a global crisis. As envoys land for peace, warships stand ready. This is diplomacy on the edge of war. Even if the war ends tomorrow, the damage to the global economy is already done. India, UK strategic alliance, two global powers are quietly building the future of security. Now, let's dive into the details of today's biggest stories.
Trump administration vows crackdown on Chinese companies exploiting our models made in U.S. A technological Cold War is reaching a boiling point tonight as the Trump administration vows to crush what it calls industrial-scale theft of American artificial intelligence. In a scathing memo, Chief Tech Advisor Michael Kratsios accused Chinese entities of distilling the brilliance of U.S. models, essentially hijacking American innovation to supercharge their own systems at a fraction of the cost. The administration is now moving to hunt down and punish these offenders, alongside U.S. giants like OpenAI and Anthropic, who claim China is repackaging American genius into autocratic AI. But the battlefield is messy. While Congress pushes for sanctions against Chinese coercion, Beijing is firing back, calling the accusations groundless suppression and a smear campaign against their own booming industry. The stakes? Total global dominance. With Stanford reporting the performance gap between the two nations has effectively closed, the U.S. is desperate to protect its lead. As a high-stakes state visit to Beijing looms, the world is watching. Will this be a diplomatic breakthrough or the start of a digital Iron Curtain? Russian strikes wound more than a dozen in Ukraine. Officials. A brutal night of fire and steel has once again shattered the silence across Ukraine. Overnight, Russian forces unleash a relentless wave of drone and missile strikes, leaving more than a dozen civilians wounded, including at least 2 children, as a 4-year war drags deeper into a bitter stalemate. In the central city of Dnipro, the darkness was punctuated by explosions that tore through apartment buildings. Rescue workers, guided only by flashlights, were seen pulling survivors from the smoldering rubble. Among the 14 injured is a 9-year-old boy. Further south in the frontline city of Kherson, a 60-year-old woman suffered concussion from a drone's explosive drop, while in Kharkiv, a toddler just 18 months old was caught in the crossfire. Moscow claims it intercepted over 120 Ukrainian drones in return, but the human cost remains staggering, as tens of thousands lay dead or wounded since the 2022 invasion U.S. Brokered peace talks are frozen. Tonight, the hope for a deal feels as distant as ever, leaving families to huddle in the wreckage of their homes.
U.S. rules out extending waivers for Russian and Iranian oil. The global energy war is entering a ruthless new phase tonight as U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent vows to tighten the noose on Russian and Iranian oil. In a move that signals a zero-tolerance policy, Bessent confirmed the U.S. will let a critical sanctions waiver expire, effectively trapping Russian oil currently at sea. Even more striking is the total blockade on Iran. With the Strait of Hormuz closed and the U.S.-Israeli
conflict escalating, Bessent predicts Iran will be forced to shutter production within days, a move that could cause permanent damage to their oil wells. While a temporary reprieve was previously granted to protect vulnerable nations from skyrocketing prices, the Treasury Secretary insists the mercy period is over. He claims the world's supply has stabilized enough to cut the cord, regardless of the tension-rattling global markets. As crude prices teeter and geopolitical lines are drawn in the sand, Washington is betting big that this economic stranglehold will break its adversaries before it breaks the global economy. U.S. pushes for direct talks in Islamabad as Iran demands indirect mediation. High-stakes diplomacy moves to Islamabad tonight as a desperate search for peace begins in Pakistan. Top U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have touched down to confront an Iranian delegation, aiming to break a deadlock that has the world's economy by the throat. The mission is clear: reopen the Strait of Hormuz. While the White House hopes for a face-to-face breakthrough, Tehran remains defiant, insisting through state media that direct talks are not in the cards. The urgency is undeniable. A third U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, has just arrived in the region as a shadow over the negotiations. Even as a fragile ceasefire extension holds in Lebanon, the ground remains soaked in blood. 6 lives were claimed by fresh Israeli strikes today, even as Prime Minister Netanyahu vows a historic peace. But for many, like those digging through the rubble in Tyre for a mother's perfume bottle, the damage is already done. Tonight, the world holds its breath. Will Islamabad be a bridge to peace, or just another stop on the road to total war? Trump dispatches Witkoff and Kushner to Pakistan for new talks with Iran's foreign minister. A desperate diplomatic gamble is unfolding in Islamabad tonight. President Trump has dispatched power players Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to Pakistan for a high-stakes showdown with Iran's top diplomat. The mission: break the stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz before the global economy collapses. While envoys talk, the drums of war beat louder. 3 U.S. aircraft carriers, a massive force of 15,000 sailors, now prowl the region with orders to shoot and kill any threats. To keep the lights on at home, Trump has extended the Jones Act waiver, desperate to move oil as prices hover at a staggering $100 per barrel. The human cost is harrowing. Over 5,800 are dead across Iran and Lebanon. Even as a fragile ceasefire extension holds, missiles are still flying. Israel and Hezbollah traded drone shoot-downs just hours ago. As the world watches Pakistan, the question remains: will Kushner's productive conversation forge a historic peace, or is this merely the quiet before an even greater storm? Oil comeback depends on Hormuz lifeline, Goldman Sachs. The lifeblood of the global economy hangs in a precarious balance tonight. A bombshell report from Goldman Sachs warns that while a dramatic rebound in Gulf oil output is possible, the road to recovery is choked by an unprecedented logistical nightmare. Production has plummeted by a staggering 14.5 million barrels per day, a 57% collapse since the war ignited. While experts suggest 70% of that lost crude could flood back within 3 months of reopening the Strait of Hormuz, the scarring effects of a prolonged shutdown loom large. Tanker capacity has been slashed in half, and technical decay in aging reservoirs from Iran to Iraq means some wells may never breathe again. The stakes couldn't be higher. Saudi Arabia stands ready to ramp up, but with pipelines diverted and infrastructure under constant threat, the final phase of recovery remains a ghost. In a world starved for energy, the message is clear. Even if the guns fall silent tomorrow, the shadow of this conflict will haunt global markets for quarters to come. Tech, terror and defense. India, UK and NSA's discuss 2035 roadmap. In the heart of New Delhi, a powerful new alliance is taking shape. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and his British counterpart Jonathan Powell have just concluded the India-UK Strategic Dialogue, solidifying a comprehensive strategic partnership designed to withstand an increasingly volatile world. From the high-tech frontiers of semiconductor fabrication in Odisha to the shadowed fight against global terrorism and extremism, the message is clear. London and New Delhi are locking arms. The two nations are fast-tracking the Vision 2035 roadmap, pouring resources into artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and a massive expansion of maritime defense in the Indo-Pacific. But the talks weren't just about technology. With global trade routes under fire in West Asia and the Russia-Ukraine conflict showing no end, Doval underscored that diplomacy is the only path. As British defense manufacturers move to integrate with India's industrial base, this dialogue marks a historic pivot aimed at securing the digital and physical borders of two of the world's most influential democracies.
If you value real, balanced reporting from across the globe, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss the stories that matter. Stay informed, stay aware, stay ahead. Only on Zenith Global News.